Hello and welcome back to the movies made us do it. Me and Matt are back. How are you, Matt?
I am pretty good, sir. How are you?
I'm alright. We've been talking for like half an hour, but let's pretend like we've only just started. Mad Max, Furiosa is coming out soon this week, maybe. So we thought good excuse to go back, as we did with Planet of the Apes. Go back to the start and start with Mad Max, a very, very, very different film to its sequels. I mean, all of the Mad Max sequels are kind of different to each other, but they at least have a very much a post-apocalyptic vibe once you get past the first one.
Yeah,
the first one.
Well, I think this has a. I mean, this has.
So with the first one, I always got the impression with Mad Max before Mad Max 2. It was like it's dystopian.
Yes.
People are impoverished. There's a lot of crime. There's not enough police. They're underfunded, clearly.
Yeah.
But you don't necessarily get that it's the post-apocalypse. You just get the feeling that things are breaking down. Society is breaking down. The second one onwards is like, oh, someone nuked everything. At some point. Like, I don't get that vibe from this movie. Although they've retconned it now to where I guess they did, or that something big had happened. So
yeah, I think what they've kind of said now is that in the first movie, a war had happened.
Yes,
but not necessarily nuclear yet.
Yeah, certainly by Thunderdome, it's nuked.
Yeah, so in the first one, wars happened. Society is just falling apart.
Yeah.
And generally crumbling.
Mm-hmm.
And then by the end of the movie, nuclear war has broken out.
Sure.
So, after that happens, and then we get the however many years between the first and the second one.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think because Miller has kind of basically had the genius idea of saying, each movie is someone telling a story.
I love that
character.
I love him for that so much.
Yeah.
That's such a genius thing to come up with to get out of any issues. Ever. Like, those like annoying fans at conventions that like ask the really awkward questions to actors and directors who clearly would never know the answer. He's just answered all of them. He's just removed any questions. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's just how they described him, and that, I mean, it's kind of the best way you can do for recasting him as well. When you have him in the Fury Road Max looks pretty much nothing like any of the other the previous,
and it doesn't
Max.
matter. Yeah,
but that's fine because you just say, well, that's because that's how they told him, that's how they saw him. That's just it, and that works really well, especially for the third one, because there's a lot of sort of story stuff in the third one. Where you've got the sort of the kids telling stories and
I've got to say, I rewatched all three a couple of months back.
Okay.
And I was struck by how much I really enjoyed Thunderdome. Like, it was like the black sheep to me. And rewatching it, I was like, do you know what? There's a lot of fun to be had with Thunderdome. I quite like it for the most part.
It's been a while since I've seen Thunderdome.
It's great until he finds the kids.
I always watch 1 and 2, and I tend to.
Yeah, me too.
3.
It's great until he gets to the kids. That's it's pretty fun until then. But yeah, the first and the second are certainly where it's at. The second one, obviously, pretty much did what Conan did for fantasy movies. It did for post-apocalyptic. It set the stage. It's like, this is how your post-apocalyptic movie looks now. Your post-apocalyptic video game looks now. Wasteland came out of this, and obviously Fallout eventually came out of this.
And the thing is, it's so influential that when you've even got politicians saying things like, "Oh, it's like a Mad Max scenario."
Yeah.
Get that sort of thing happening. Your movie's going to be remembered.
Yeah.
Because when your movie is a byword for things going to shit.
Yeah.
That people use. Yeah, I think you've done pretty well there.
I think so too. When did you first see Mad Max? Did you see Mad Max first?
I did.
Okay, so did I.
And I think that's quite. It seems to be quite rare because I think a lot of people have seen the second one first.
Yes, so I saw the first one first, which I think is why it's my favorite. Because I'm pretty sure most people's favorite is the second or Fury Road.
I must admit the second one is my favorite.
It's up there. I mean, it's a close second for me, but I think it's that first film I saw, Itis, you know, where this is the one. I think I also really enjoy the more car chasiness of the first one, you know, which you don't get so much, you know. Generally, in sequels, he drives the car and crashes it immediately, or it blows up.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah. I think some of the characters are certainly better in the first one.
Yes.
I think the bad guys are better.
Oh yeah, Toe Cutter's amazing.
Because Toe Cutter's
such
so
a great
much better
villain.
than Humongous.
And even the ancillary villains, you know, like Kundalini and that whole gang, Bubba. There's like a whole bunch of them. You're like, yeah, these are actually really good villains, all of them.
And I mean, come on, my favourite, Mudguts.
Mudguts. What a name!
Mudguts.
Yeah,
that's my favourite of the bad guy names. Mudguts. It's brilliant.
So,
and I love Bubba. Looks like when someone would say, if someone says Bubba to me, I would probably think of like some sort of Southern American guy, you know,
some overweight hick or something.
Yeah, something like that. And
he looks like Rob Halford.
Effeminate blonde dude.
Yeah, it's Rob Halford, like from 80s Rob Halford, not current day Rob Halford.
It's totally Rob Halford from that time.
Yeah, from that period, right?
I guess I didn't think of it that way. Yeah,
it's Painkiller era Rob Halford. Yeah. Or would it be Painkiller, or would it be like Electric Eye kind of era?
Wouldn't it?
Yeah. But yeah, so
so I watched it on TV. I was one of those late night ones, late night TV jobs.
I think my dad was a huge fan of the movie, so me and my brother watched this as kids on VHS, I think, and just we watched this movie so much as kids, because my brother loved it as well. It was one of those we kind of diverge in terms of films we like. We have we actually have quite similar tastes now, but growing up we had quite different tastes.
Right.
So there were a few movies. The Warriors and Mad Max were ones we completely agreed on, and like, you know, we would always watch those movies because both of us loved it, so it was like, you know, always on. But yeah, I loved this movie from when I first saw it.
What does your brother usually watch then? What's his bag?
He watches a lot of stuff now. He's not so much into sci-fi.
Right.
And you know, we'd almost get into these kind of, you know, the stupid arguments you get into when you're a kid with your sibling.
Yeah.
Where like I would be like, but like Mad Max is kind of sci-fi, dude.
Yeah.
And he'd be like, no, it's not. You know, it would be that kind of argument where it's like, this is borderline though. You know, even when you look at it, The Warriors is kind of science fiction. It's not like, that's not real world, is it? It's a fantasy world that they've created, a science fiction-ish scenario where society's broken down so badly. But yeah, so that would always be the kind of line. I think he wasn't so much into science fiction, but he was very much into cars, became a mechanic, has a garage now, that kind of stuff. So this movie is perfect for him. This is, you know, I think this is why he probably prefers this to the.
Well, I was going to say, if he's a gearhead, then that makes perfect sense.
So, should we get into it?
Yeah.
So the effective setting, I guess, first. It's set in the like, kind of near future, dystopian, kind of impoverished Australia future. We have crime is rife, gangs are rife, and we've got this underfunded police force that all of the gangs called the Bronze, which I quite like throughout the movie. And effectively this under funded, overwhelmed police force patrol these roads, these dangerous roads in the outback, soon to be wasteland, but currently outback, I think.
Yeah.
So as the movie starts, I really like, this is a tiny little thing, but I've always really liked how the credits appear with the music, like almost in time with the music.
Yeah.
At the start.
And that the tune.
Oh, it's great.
It's Brian May. But not that Brian May.
A different Brian May.
And
still a very talented Brian May, though.
Yeah, Miller basically asked him to do a Bernard Herrmann type score, and you're like, well, that makes sense.
Yeah, he did it
because he certainly has. You can hear the psycho, strings and stuff in this, as it were.
Yeah, I love that that opening theme and the credits, and then the kind of almost drawn, almost spray painted logo.
Yeah.
Very 70s, but very cool.
Mm-hmm.
And then we cut to a pervert police officer watching a couple fuck in a field. He's looking down the barrel of his rifle for his scope. Sorry, of his rifle.
Roop, isn't it, that one?
Sorry.
Roop.
I can never remember their names.
Roop.
His partner, long-suffering partner, I get the impression, dealing with this guy's shit, is listening in on the radio, and they get the call that this gang have stolen a police vehicle.
Yeah.
This prized V8 Interceptor.
He broke out. He was basically in custody. He's broken out of custody, and he's killed at least one copper, and he's stolen their car, basically.
And they make it clear in a minute that I think the woman on the radio says, "Oh, this one really burns. This is a V8. It's so even in this initial movie, the V8s are very rare because, of course, later it becomes like, oh, it's the last of the V8s. The Interceptor. It's like there's barely any of these things left in the world. But even at this stage, it's pretty rare that there's a V8, and the police force, underfunded as they are very prized. Of this vehicle. We will come to see that this vehicle kind of only exists to bribe Max into staying into his job, but we'll get to that in a bit. So they briefly have a scuffle and an argument over who gets to drive. And
he starts driving because he gets in, and I love it. He says to him, he blasphemes. He's
like, for Christ's sake, he's like, I don't need to work with a blasphemer.
Yeah.
By the way, if you're watching this movie, depending on the version of DVD or Blu-ray you have, if you get to a point and you're like, why does Mel Gibson sound so awfully English and awkward? It's because you've got the wrong dub. So change it to the original language.
I didn't know about that dub.
Oh yeah, our first DVD had that dub, and it was like, what is going on?
It's so weird. I can't remember whether it was on that version was on TV or whether I just saw it at someone's house.
Mine was on the first DVD of it I bought, had it, and then you could turn it off. And that's the first time I ever heard it. I was like, what the hell? Because it defaulted to it, and then I was like, what is this?
Well, it's because they basically said the Americans wouldn't be able to understand the Australians because at that point, the Americans hadn't had any real sort of experience of Australian culture, which
Neighbours hadn't hit yet.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? Over here, we were used to sort of Australian soap operas.
I love the idea of, like, in the 80s and 90s, we're all like, I can't understand a goddamn word this Kylie Minogue's saying.
Yeah.
What is she on about?
She's pretty, but I have no idea what she's
saying.
But we had all those. I mean, we had Prisoner Cell Block Cage.
Yeah.
And we had, Neighbours and Shortland Street and all those sort of things. So we were used to Australian, voices and things.
Yeah.
It wasn't till a couple of years later that when I saw the American dub, I was like, what have they done to this movie? What the fuck is this? This is so weird.
It's so strange. But yes, as you said, they argue over who's driving. His partner is like, look, I'm listed to do the driving on this one, but this guy is just determined.
I've already been assigned. Yeah, he says.
But anyway, they eventually get on it and they head out and start pursuing. There's another car in pursuit as well. Two of these police patrol cars.
So I can't remember which one's which, but I think
the names completely escape me. So if you've got them,
their car's Big Bopper, I think.
Yeah.
And the other one that's chasing them is March Hare. If I remember rightly, that's the order it is.
Okay.
That's the cars, anyway.
Yeah, so at this stage, we just see the Knight Rider and his partner laughing and driving. like maniacs while these cops follow. I think it's only when we get Max that they start speaking, isn't it? Until then, they're silent. So we get, what I really love is interspersed with the chase that's going on. We just see Max. We don't see his face, but we just see Max like sorting his car out. He's got the hood up and he's like, tuning his car. And then, you kind of see him listening to the radio and stuff. His introduction is fantastic. I love the way they introduce him in this.
Yeah, because you don't actually see him properly till about 12 minutes in.
But he's a badass. You're like, okay, this is the dude, right? It's like, this is the guy. So I think, where do we start with? So first of all, we get the because they crash like twice, right?
I think
in pursuit. So at first they crash into the sign, don't they? The road sign.
So
three times.
Yeah, the first one is
the road sign.
They're merging, aren't they, at a junction?
Yeah.
And
he's trying to shoot him with the double barrel, right?
Yeah, he's got the double barrel. And he's trying to shoot them, and Knight Rider breaks, so they go over.
Right.
And a sign. Yeah.
They then recover. And the his partner's like, we're out of this, like, stop. And from this point on, his partner is trying to talk sense. He's like, stop, like, we're done. And he's like, no, I'm gonna continue.
I love how determined fucking Roop is. He's like, fuck that shit, I'm getting back into the car, and he's like, move the fuck over, I'm driving.
Yeah. So they head out again. We then cut, I think, to this. So then we cut to the couple arguing, and we've also got Goose getting involved now, haven't we?
Yeah, I love Goose's introduction's great as well. He's
superb. He's just in this cafe, just telling this horrible story.
Yeah, he says, he went through the windscreen and then bounced back through the windscreen again. And he said, when we got there, he was sat there trying to scream with his face ripped off. And the bloke in front of the other side of the table pushes his plate forward and he goes, "You're not going to eat that?" He says, "Yeah, I've lost my appetite."
But then the people come in and they're like, "Hey, your radio's going crazy out there." And of course he realizes, "Oh no, he hears it on the TV, doesn't he, or whatever?" They've got it on.
Yeah, and then he sees the cars.
That's right. Yeah, they speed past. So he runs out. He's their motorcycle cop.
Yeah.
So he then chases after them. We've got this. Oh, and I love how the tow cars also speed out.
Yeah,
because they're like, there's going to be an accident. Like, just like, this is good business for us. Follow the police.
They get money for all the parts and stuff.
Yeah.
So
I love the idea that there's this like side business in recovery. And they're getting all the scraps. That all they do is follow Goose and or other police around.
Yeah,
they're just like, because it's gonna happen. Someone's gonna die horribly, and we'll get the scrap. So yeah, these two tow trucks also speed out of there after Goose.
Well, one thing we should point out is that one of the inspirations for this, the idea of this sort of dystopian future, was there was a in the 70s in Australia. Well, I think over here we had one as well, but there was an oil crisis.
Yeah. In fact, the second one kind of makes the whole war about the oil crisis, doesn't it? If I remember rightly.
Yes. So that's basically what happened. Is he said that there were lines and lines of people trying to get, petrol, for, as far as the eye to see, and people, they got into fist fights when somebody would cut in, or so that sort of inspired him, and also the fact that he was a doctor. Working in emergency rooms, and he'd see all these accidents, and I think by this time as well he'd already lost, I think, at least 3 of his his mates in car accidents. So I think it was very heavy in his mind that how dangerous the road is, and how so that's what he wanted to do, and the idea of as he said, he wanted to make a silent movie with noise, which kind of makes sense for how the movie's filmed.
Yeah. So there's this couple arguing. Meanwhile, their child starts running down the middle of the road. Meanwhile, there's a couple trying to turn their caravan.
Yeah.
It's just like this whole scene of events happening all bad for a police chase.
It's literally like you can see the guys coming crossing the road with the window.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah,
the fruit cart being pulled out.
Yeah. And of course they're chasing as fast as they can. The Knight Rider you get the impression briefly that the Knight Rider is just going to run this kid over. Like there's a real moment where you're like, oh god.
Because you get a big close up of him, and he's like licking his lips as he's.
Well, and she's like, this is too far even for me, dude. Like, what are you doing? Yeah. But he doesn't. It's kind of a cool fake out moment because I genuinely, the first time I watched it, I was like, oh my god, like, they're gonna kill this kid. The kid is kind of in between the cars. And I
think this is where you get the second wipe out for Big Bopper. I think they go again, don't they?
Is it? I can't remember. So this is when that's right, because he kind of damages all of the front end, doesn't he? And it's all kind of knackered at this point. And then they continue, and then we get the caravan. Is that right? So the caravan's in a bit.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. But so then the chase continues on.
I think there's a van at that point as well. I think there's a.
Oh yeah, he hits the van, doesn't he? That's what does his
And what I love about that van is, so they to make it safe and to make it more spectacular, they took the engine out of it so that it was, a light frame basically.
Sure.
And when they hit it, it just because it didn't have the weight, it just like spun round shitloads, and that's why it looks like it does, because it was just like, it's like, oh shit. Well, it looked great.
It did. It looks like they hit it with a tank at like 120 mile an hour, but it looks cool. Again, they've knackered the car, but they're continuing. I think Goose now catches up pretty much. He's right behind them at this point.
Yeah.
And then we get the caravan. So the family are turning around. Yeah. I think it might be the kid this time. I can't remember how the sequence of these events, but in any case, the Knight Rider manages to avoid this. The police car goes through the caravan into a phone box.
Yep.
His partner's now got his throat cut, right? And he's like holding his throat, and they're like, oh, we're out of the game. And I love Goose skids and crashes, and this guy's like, oh my god, what happened? And Goose is like, I don't know, man, I just got it myself.
Yeah, that's it. Goose has clearly like mashed his leg up in that.
Yeah.
In that as well.
Yeah.
He has. Goose is just. I love
so great.
His nonchalance is fantastic.
But I think that's what serves this film so well is his attitude towards life versus what happens to him. Mm-hmm. It is so much more shocking because he's like, he's. You can totally see why Max is like, that's not the Goose later on, because he's like, that's not the guy. Like, he's the guy that gets injured and is still laughing about it and just kind of, Mr. Positive, in the face of awfulness happening to him. This was the film. This and Top Gun. I was like, anyone called Goose, man.
Really. Well. Do not don't call yourself Goose.
No, it's a bad name. It's a bad omen. So Goose finally contacts Max, and he's like, we are completely snafu'd. We kind of need our top pursuit man, who is Max Rokotansky, I think his name is. So we now finally see Max grabs the radio, and he's like, how many injured and whatnot. And this is the first time we hear from the Knight Rider, because the Knight Rider starts taunting him over the radio, and he says, that he's the Knight Rider and that he's gonna, basically take everyone out. He's basically out of control and taunting Max.
And he does shout out, "Toe Cutter knows who I am."
Yes,
all that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
and I like the some of the stuff he shouts out are AC/DC lyrics.
Of course.
Like, why not? If you're going to quote some lyrics, why not AC/DC?
I really like in this scene as well is that you've just had this horrific accident. really bad injuries. Max is hearing about this. He's then getting taunted by the Knight Rider, who's driving like a maniac.
Yep.
Max pulls out of here so calmly.
Yeah.
It's just slowly moves the car out, turns the corner, and leaves. It's like he's just super cool and super collected in this moment. He's just like, nope, this is it.
But he's as this movie's compared to a lot, he's basically the Western hero, isn't he?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
He's the sheriff that's waiting for the bad guy.
Yeah, I mean it's certainly at this stage he's not Mad Max yet. He's Max.
No. There's even a scene later on with Toe Cutter and that is basically pays homage to oh my god, now I'm gonna forget what we did it. We did the movie, the Western, the black and white.
Oh, Western. We've done a couple of Westerns.
The black and white one, oh my god, High Noon.
I was gonna say, yeah.
At the station, there's a whole bit in the station that's very High Noon.
Yes, absolutely. Actually, yeah, I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, so it does have that sort of that Western sort of feel to it. And apparently, when it was released in Japan, they immediately were like, "Oh, this is a samurai movie."
Yeah.
So it has those archetypes. It's yeah.
But as the Knight Rider continues taunting and driving down the road, he sees a car up ahead, and of course it is Max, basically driving towards him. The Knight Rider obviously thinks this is hilarious, and puts his foot down. So does Max. And it becomes clear to Knight Rider that Max is not going to move. And so Knight Rider's the one to pull out of the way.
Blinks, yeah.
He blinks, he pulls out of the way. And I love that from this point on, like, the mask's like he's completely lost it.
Yeah, he completely crumbles.
Crumbled. Like, he has completely destroyed all of this man's confidence and anything, like, all of his talk, all of his bravado is gone. And he starts weeping.
He looked in his eyes and saw that he was a bigger man and was like, no.
And that he's not going to give up. And you've got this great scene where, like, his girlfriend's like, what's wrong? And he's, like, weeping as Max is, like, now pushing the back of his car. He's, like, hitting into it, revving and pushing into the back of this car. And the Knight Rider is just completely broken. But, of course, he doesn't have long to cry because he is then involved in a massive accident. This happens a couple of times where I'm not quite sure how Max manages to cause this accident and not get in the accident himself. Because he does it again at the end, and I'm like, how did you do that? Did you just teleport? But it looks very cool. So
it does.
So we get the eye popping out thing, which happens a couple of times in the movie as well, which I'm a big fan of.
As well. Yeah, I love the eye popping thing.
It's great. So he's dead, and so is his girlfriend, we assume.
I don't think she'd survive, to be fair.
I think they're both very dead.
I mean, there's a big explosion and stuff. And what I love is, they used a jet engine on it.
Oh, so I can believe it.
When it goes off, there's a jet engine. But the funny thing is it went out of control. So they used the jet engine. The car just went off like quarter of a mile down the road, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And like they're sort of chasing like people. It's like, oh shit! And so they had to recreate the explosion, later. So the initial thing didn't work quite as they wanted, but they managed to pull off a spectacular looking thing anyway.
It looks awesome. There's certainly, especially the way they cut it together with the eyes popping out and everything else.
Yeah,
it looks great.
We should mention David Egby, who was the cinematographer, who is an absolute nutter. So this dude, because it's because they were filming this with no money, and but for the beginning of the movie anyway, beginning of the filming, they were doing illegal basically. They had no permits or anything, so they get in, close the road down, do what they want, and then fuck off as quickly as they possibly could.
Yeah,
and David Egby, there's pictures of him, strapped to the front of bonnets.
Well, it's one of the things that Death Proof kind of aped on, wasn't it? The whole stunt person thing and crazy filming thing.
And there's a lot of the overhead the shots of the motorbike.
Mm.
See, I mean, you can see the dials and everything, and he was just basically it was just him on the back on.
But this is
a guy.
I think he is the reason this film looks way higher budget than it is, because some of the angles he gets on the cars just look amazing.
Yeah,
they look really good.
There was no other way to get the shots than for him to be basically strapped to the front of a car or on a motorbike.
Crazy.
It's ridiculous speeds. And you see him. There's great pictures of him, and the guy who's riding the bike. He's got his full helmet on and stuff, and he's not. He's sat behind him, holding this bloody camera with no helmet on or anything. You think, Jesus Christ, just a slip, and that dude's
gone.
Totally
yeah. That's like a one and done.
And it's wonderful. Other than a few sort of spectacular sort of stunt things, there were no real sort of big accidents on this movie as well. So they did such an amazing job.
It's really lucky that people weren't killed making this film.
Considering that at any moment people could have been, because it's not like most of them were professional stuntmen or anything. They were, these are just sort of. And
there are some really impressive stunts for the budget in this movie. So yeah. Anyway, we cut to you're just talking about westerns. We cut to a western town, outlaw town, basically. This tiny little isolated town. When toe cutters or night riders, I guess, gang, now toe cutters gang.
Because he shout. My guess is that toe cutter is the leader.
Yeah, I was never sure. I guess you're right. I always see in my head. I always thought that Knight Rider was the leader, and that now Toe Cutter had taken over. But you're right, because he does say Toe Cutter knows my name. So so maybe Knight Rider was second in command, and now he's dead. It's down to Bubba. I don't know.
I don't know what the pecking order is,
because it's like the way they behave at the train station. It almost feels to me like he was their leader, he was their god.
It certainly feels like he's a legend.
I wonder whether he became a legend because of the way he died here, and now they're like, oh, he is forever remember his name. He killed all these people. He did all this damage.
Yeah.
But anyway, we see this couple in the back of their car. As this gang roll into town. A couple of people come out of their houses, curious as this mass of bikes appears and pulls up.
Yeah, and you get the couple with the car.
Yeah,
and you just think, if I was that dude, as soon as they turned up, I'd have just got in the car and slowly driven away. Away. Just before they noticed you, but no, they stay.
Just made out like you were driving through,
Yeah.
As they come in, you're coming out. Just don't make a massive. Whatever you do, don't wheel spin away when they start beating people up, because it's going to be really obvious that you're running away.
Do not be Startled Rabbit, because Startled Rabbit gets chased by the wolf.
Yeah, especially in that fucking thing.
Yeah.
She does nothing wrong. She does not deserve anything. He deserves a slap for a black car. This is a beautiful car that he's ruined.
He certainly does more than that, doesn't he? I mean, oof.
Yeah.
They both do.
Oh, yeah, dude. This film. That's one of the things. This film is very brutal. Like a lot of the things that happen, not necessarily on screen, but a lot of the things that are implied that happen in this film are really dark and really brutal.
Yeah.
So anyway, they head to the nearby train station, where
But I like it. They go. The old guy comes up. I like the old guy. He comes out of the shop, doesn't he? And they sort of surround him, and they're like talking about, we've come to meet the train. He goes, there's nothing on the train except for some stuff. And he starts laughing. He's like, oh yeah, and a coffin. And then they're all like, yep, that's who we're here to meet.
I like when when they're at the station, and he's like, oh, there's not much left of him, and Bubba's like, must have taken his heart, eh?
Yeah.
He's like, oh, must have removed his heart, eh? And the guy's like, yeah, I guess that must be it.
What I love as well, though, is the guy says, oh, you need to talk to the station master, and he says, Okay, well, let's go talk to the station master. And then he comes out with the hat on.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
So yeah, they actually don't actually take him at this point. So they must go back again because, of course, they go out to start effectively terrorizing the town.
Yeah.
They're stealing fuel and just causing mayhem. They start a fight with this guy for no reason and then throw him through a window, just kick the shit out of him. They throw ice cream in his face. That's a thing that happens a lot in this movie. People get ice cream in their face.
Yeah, and what I like is you get a real feel for Toe Cutter because he's talking to the station master.
He's always watching his gang, though, isn't he? He's always.
And there's the guys. There are a bunch of guys behind him. I think it's Kundalini, Mudguts, and Bubba, isn't it?
Yes.
I think they're all sort of like dancing and stuff. And
you get the impression that I always got the impression that Bubba's the only one he really trusts to fall in line. The rest of them need watching. He doesn't need to watch Bubba. Bubba will do what he says. The rest of them
seems like he's the only one that actually is stable enough.
Yeah. Well, you get the impression that Bubba's kind of a psychopath, but he's probably more stable than even Toe Cutter is, to be honest.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I love the way he says, the guy says, the station master says something derogatory, and he grabs him by the face. He says, "It's the Night Rider."
Yeah.
Remember his name when you look at the night sky. And the guy says, "Whatever you say," and he says, "What a wonderful philosophy you have."
Yeah. I gotta say, I think is it Hugh K's Burn?
Yeah, Hugh K's Burn.
I think this might be the best performance in the film.
Yes.
I think Toe Cutter makes this movie more than Mel Gibson, more than anyone else.
Hmm?
The performance of Toe Cutter is so good.
Gibson's
great. He's fine.
Yeah, and he does get to do some really interesting stuff with his wife.
Yes, for sure.
Which is really cool. I like the stuff with his wife, later on. But he gets the scene tune. The scene.
He gets all the fun bits.
Chewing, Yeah, he gets the really cool, amazing stuff, and he's just clearly doing whatever he wants because he's changing his accent. He's
having fun whilst being awful.
And apparently, Keith Bone was a Shakespearean actor, which you think, well, that makes bloody sense, doesn't it? Because he's there, and he apparently he would just sleep out with his bike, and he was
just really method.
Of those guys basically stayed in character for almost the entire movie. I mean, when you consider that, other than the sort of the core who were actors, the main guys, they were actors, but the rest of the gang were a real motorcycle gang from Sydney. That
makes sense.
And they were given the Kawasaki's basically, and I think it was in Sydney.
Was that their payment? You get the bike.
Actually, they kept the bikes afterwards. I mean, they rode from Sydney to Melbourne because they couldn't. They had no other way of transporting the bikes there.
Well, and I guess if you're filming guerrilla, you just need to. I imagine there was a lot of driving until we found a patch that was empty enough and quiet enough for us to get away with the next scene. You know? I imagine it was like a moving feast.
Yeah. One of the cooler things.
But I mean, the outback is huge, so I guess they've got the benefit of
but it was actually filmed mostly around Melbourne, and this is one of those great places because it's another one of those things about Australian names. So there's like places that they filmed where there's a place called Geelong and Ballarat. There's a place called Ballarat. What I love Australian names. They're kind of like, again, it's like Western towns, like Big Whiskey and stuff like that. These weird names that just seem to come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And the other thing with the initially, as I said, with the guerrilla filming, when they were just sort of closing range down, the actual Victoria Police heard what they were doing, and then they got involved. They actually helped them out.
Really?
They liked what they were doing, and they ended up helping them out in the later film stages. They would close down roads for them.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, really cool.
So after they start kicking the shit out of the guy and robbing the place, the guy now decides now is the time to, as loud and quick as possible,
Oh, hang on. Before we get to that part, again sorry, when we're keeping with the train guy,
Yeah.
the station master. He's after he says that sort of thing about the wonderful philosophy and stuff.
He gets taken away, doesn't he?
Yeah, he says to his guys, take him away, and they grab him to sort of and you think, oh, that's it at the end for him, and he just goes,
yeah,
and they usually
like,
no, just take him away, don't harm him, just take him away.
As another,
and I love that control he has. He just goes.
It's another integral part of Toe Cutter's personality is snake and cat hisses.
Yeah,
it's just his thing. But his gang, no, that means no.
Yeah, and he basically tells them to go away so that he can be sat with the coffin, doesn't he?
So he wants to be alone with Knight Rider.
Yeah.
So then they start beating up the guy, throwing him through the window. And this is when the guy decides he's gonna make a run for it. So he speeds off in this car,
and he nearly hits. So Toe Cutter hearing the.
Yeah, he comes out. I think he's coming out to stop the gang brutalizing the town. In fact, I think he's coming out to be like, "Don't cause trouble because we're here to collect Knight Rider and leave." We can probably get this stuff by bullying people. We don't need to have the police on our. He probably doesn't want the police on their tail or at that stage.
Yeah.
So I think he was going out initially to kind of be like, I told you to stop, But of course, on his way out, this kid almost runs him over.
Yeah.
And then, of course, everyone's like, oh no, now it's on.
Yeah. And I love the way he just runs out and whistles and everybody stops what they're doing. It's like,
they just start wooing straight away because they know. They're like, oh, okay. It's on. Meanwhile, this kid is all smug, smiling to his girlfriend, like, don't worry, no worries, it's fine.
We're fine. We're getting away.
And then, of course, the bike's on the horizon, and they very quickly catch up to him.
Yeah.
I think they end up throwing like a tire iron or something in through the front window, don't they? Which causes him to.
I mean,
they start hitting it with axes and stuff on the road.
Massive fucking meat cleaver starts chopping on the side of the fucking car.
Yeah. And then eventually, I think what they do is they throw either like a wheel rim or a tire iron off a bridge, don't they, into the window?
No, that's later.
Or is that later? Well, either way, they throw something into the window. That's what causes the crash.
Yeah.
And they crash onto the side of the road. And this gang are just absolute savages. They just start smashing the absolute crap out of this car.
Yeah.
While they both scream, and then eventually they're both dragged out of the car.
Yeah. And that's one of the great things about this movie is that so many of the reviews and things at the time all said, "Oh no, it's massively violent and massively horror. It's like real horror." And yes, it is.
It's implied.
But you don't see it.
No, you do. You don't
see it.
You see the result of a lot of violence. You see the horrific result, and even then, it's never. I mean, there are moments like later on, Max's wife and kid getting run over.
Yeah.
Perfect time to show unnecessarily gory moments.
Mm-hmm.
This the raping of this guy and this girl.
Yeah.
Perfect time if you want to go crazy with violence and get an X rating.
Yeah,
that's how you do it. But they don't. It's all very much implied, or you see the result of, and it's just as bad. And I think in a lot of ways, I always thought it was so much more effective that you never see what Goose looks like.
Mm-hmm.
You just see Max's reaction. You see the hand.
You see his hand, yeah,
and that's enough.
Mm-hmm.
And you see the obviously they've got that weird cage over the bed, so the shapes were weird, and like you can see there's something in there, but.
Yeah.
It's not seeing it is so much more effective. And like here, if there was like a gratuitous rape scene for the sake of it, it's like, oh God, Jesus, really? Do we have to fucking sit through that,
Yeah. Yeah, know what.
But it's so much worse when you don't see it. It's like, oh my God, like that must have been so brutal and you can see how brutal they are from their actions against the car before that. We don't need to see what they do to the couple. We saw what they did to the car. They were animals. So I think they're right. It is very violent, or it's very much implied to be very violent. You don't see a guy saw his own foot off or tried to saw his own foot off. It's implied that he might try, or that he has the option to try.
Yeah.
But I think it's a perfect example of, like, we don't need to see these things if it's directed effectively.
There were you see some of the, like, there's a bit where they come up, Max and the cops are another car crash.
Yeah.
And you see the sort of guy all bloodied and, hanging out of the car and stuff like that. So you see damage and you see the things, but most of the time you don't actually see the violence itself.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, is that the next scene?
I think it's either that or we go to the
station
next. Like, it's something like that. Yeah.
I think it might be that scene and then the station and then they go back out, which is when they come across the result of this.
Mm-hmm.
Let's assume that's what happens. If you're the first person, if this is the first time listening to the show, we fuck this up all the time. So just strap in while you get really frustrated that we get things out of order. It's just how we do things. I'm afraid. I literally watched this last night, and a bit of it I finished this morning. So, this is as good as my memory gets, basically. But yeah, so let's assume that's what happens. Max and Goose, who is now currently Max's partner due to his injury, happen across this horrific accident, and
we get introduced to Fifi as well, don't we?
Oh, Fifi's so good.
He's a wrestler, apparently.
I can believe it. He looks like a goddamn wrestler.
Yeah, he does. He looks like one of those circus strongmen, doesn't he?
Yeah. He turns out, he is. He's like a Victorian strongman.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. My favorite bit of him is later when he's watering topless but with a tie.
Yeah, he's got the...
It's just like, this looks amazing. It's like, wow. But anyway, they're at this crash scene and Fifi turns up, and he says, great job with this gang, with the Knight Rider. But he says, just a word of warning, he's after you. His gang is after you. They've sworn revenge. And Max obviously gets this a lot, because Max kind of shrugs it off and laughs, and he says, well, I'll add it to my list of,
Yeah, add it to the list of enemies, basically, is what he says, isn't it?
Yeah, so he's kind of reached a point where he obviously thinks he's untouchable.
Yeah. But you can see, there's a scene with his wife, and, he's saying, maybe I've come too far, or you get the feeling that he's
considering quitting even at this stage.
Yeah. You can feel that he's reaching his breaking point.
In fact, that might be the scene we have now where he is with his wife, because he heads back after that to his wife.
Yeah.
And kid. There's a weird thing here, because I can't tell if this is a toy or not. That when they're talking and he's got that fucking revolver, the kid.
It looks like
it looks like a real gun.
It's yeah.
I was never sure.
Not bothered at all.
Yeah, I was never sure whether that was a real gun.
I like to think that it's not loaded, so.
Well, no, I'm sure it wasn't in the movie, but like for the filming. But it's kind of like, it's almost like a Verhoeven style.
Yeah.
Social commentary where this kid's just playing with a revolver on the floor.
Yeah.
Casual while they're having this chat. So yeah, he briefly talks about the fact that he wants to, he's thinking about getting out, because he's worried he'll become one of the crazies, basically.
Yeah.
He thinks he's like a chase away from becoming a psychopath like the people on the road.
Which, let's face it, is what happens.
Which, ultimately is exactly what happens. It's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy. So, he has to go in early the next day, because Goose is called him in early. This is to see the vehicle, which they're trying to bribe him with. She's upset because she's, obviously wanted to spend more time with him. And he wears the mask thing. He puts the grumpy mask on.
Yeah, the Tor Johnson mask.
Yeah. And she's like, I'm not grumpy.
Yeah.
But he says, it's the goose. I gotta go in. It's for the goose. Goose wants me there. What am I supposed to do? But as he leaves, she does. Doesn't she use sign language or something? And then she's like, I'm crazy for
sign
you.
language is not real sign language, but it's.
I don't know sign language, so she looked convincing to me.
But I do know that that's not real sign language.
Okay. Maybe they've got their own. She's got her own language,
Maybe, yeah, that's true. Could be. But she signs that I'm crazy about you, doesn't she?
Yeah.
It's like, what the hell does that mean? It's like, I'm crazy about you.
So Max heads to the station, the halls of justice, which looks like a piece of shit. There's like holes in the roof and fuck knows what.
Yeah, I think it was a pumping station, I think. Yeah.
Which makes sense because you're protecting the fuel at this point, because the fuel is the thing, right?
Yeah.
And they head into the garage because first of all we see Goose turn up and he's got the leg in a cast, doesn't he? He's screwed up. He turns up on the bike and they head down to look at the interceptor. But did you notice the rocket car on the ground before that? There's like a white rocket car.
Yeah,
and I'm like, is that something they impounded or is that something they're working on? They're just working on this rocket car.
It's never mentioned. So
no, they never mention it. It's just casually there. It's just chilling out. But you see the shape of it, and you see like the back end, and it looks like a fighter jet from behind.
Yeah, it basically looks like one of those land speed record cars.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And I was like, did they maybe have access to one of those things, and they just put it there to look something,
Probably.
But they show Max the car, and Max is kind of amazed, and they're like, "How?" He's like, "How did you build this? Like, it's a V8." He's like, "How did you build this?" Because obviously, Knight Rider totaled the car.
Yeah.
But obviously they've rebuilt it here, and he says, "Oh, a little bit from here, a little bit from there. We've made it work." They kind of pass it off like, "Oh, we scrounged it together and made it work."
Yeah.
But meanwhile, Fifi is listening in on the radio.
Yeah.
And it's clear that he basically called in every favor he could to basically get what little money he can to pay for this car to happen.
Yeah.
And one of the guys there, I guess he's like higher up in the force.
Yeah, I think he's the commissioner or something.
Is he the commissioner? Yeah. He's like, I'm not doing this again.
Yeah. What I love about that dude is he's in a kendo outfit.
Mm.
He's got a bokken, and he's clearly just come from his kendo lesson.
Yeah. It's very post-apocalyptic.
Yeah.
It's, that kind of 80s post-apocalyptic thing when everyone's wearing like ludicrous things.
Yeah.
My favorite is the lawyers actually later on, but we'll get to them shortly. They're great. So yeah, like basically it turns out they've bribed Max with this car, and it does briefly work where Max is like, "Oh my god, when do we go for a ride?" And they realize they've done it. But the commissioner says, "I'm not gonna do this again. I'm not bailing you out again. Just because your golden boy basically doesn't want to do it anymore." And Fifi says, I think he says a couple of times in the movies, like, the people need a hero. They need their heroes.
People don't believe in heroes anymore. We're going to give them their heroes back.
And that, again, is very Wild Westy, isn't
Mm-hmm.
it? That Western movie style thing of the heroes and, And you almost feel like Fifi is that. He is probably a big John Wayne fan,
Yes.
He's just like, he wants his John Wayne, and his John Wayne is Mel Gibson,
Yep.
And
I do love the look in Max's eyes when they're revving that engine up and stuff. It's so cool.
Goose does pick up though before Max says, "When do we go for a ride?"
Yeah.
Goose does pick up on the fact that Max is asking questions. He's like, "Max, you're seeing this car and you're still asking questions?" Because he's like, "Oh, where did you get the bits? How did you do this?" And Goose is like, "We've just shown you this amazing car.
Yeah,
You're still asking." Like, I think Goose knows that Max is close to leaving. He's like, "Oh, he is still borderline even with this car. It's not,
They all know he's on the verge of going. Yeah, and I love the that scoop on the top of the engine is absolutely pointless. It does nothing.
Yeah, of course.
It doesn't work.
It just looks fucking cool.
Fantastic, yeah. I think I heard someone. I watched a video on a guy who's built one. He's built the V8 Interceptor, and he said basically if that thing actually worked, when you turned it on, it would probably blow the engine out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, you don't really want that.
I think this is all opinion. I think it's a beautiful car ruined by those fucking lights they put on it. It looks so much better when those lights get smashed in the second one. It's like, yeah, now it looks amazing again. I like it, but it looks so much better without those headlights.
It is one of my favourite movie cars.
It's up there for me. But I think I prefer it in the second one when it's a bit more rusted, a bit more dinged up and smashed in.
It's got a bit more character when it's dinged up in that. And it's a Ford Falcon.
Yeah. I think they're quite rare these days because of this movie. Yeah. I think pretty much. Yeah.
And the thing that I loved about it is
because they even used a fan car for Fury Road.
Yes,
it was one of the fan cars, I think.
Yeah, well, I think with this car, I think they tried to sell it initially after the movie ended. Nobody wanted it, so I think they gave it to somebody. And then when the second movie came along, they basically just went back to him and said, "Hey, can we have the car?" And he was like, "Yeah, go on." So they took the car back, and then they did the same thing again. Nobody seemed to want it afterwards, and it ended up in a museum over here in England. Oh. It ended up in a museum over here, and now I think it's in America.
That's a shame. See, I was about to say I'd go see that. I'll travel to see that.
I got a feeling I did because I went to.
Oh, really?
I went to the museum I think it's the museum that they're talking about. I went to as a kid, so I'm pretty sure I saw it. I don't remember that.
You're too young to register. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember whether I specifically saw that car, but I did go to the museum when I was a kid. But yeah, so it's a wonderful car, and what I love about it is it reminds me of one of my favourite British cars, the Ford Capri.
Well, of course it is. Yeah,
same sort of look about it.
It's Ford, right? It's very similar.
Yeah, because there was always, like I think this and the Ford Capri were like those countries' equivalent of a Mustang.
Effectively, yeah.
Is basically what they were trying to pull off with those cars. And yes, those pursuit cars are fucking. And
I love those police pursuit cars at the start as well.
Yeah, they're all Ford Falcons.
I always think I guess it's the way that people always go. Where it's like, I'm gonna make the Mad Max car, and they always do the Interceptor.
Yeah.
But I do think it would be really cool to make one of those police cars.
Pursuit car, yeah.
Just make the pursuit cars with the colours and everything, because they do look really cool. I really like those.
One of those was previously an actual police car.
Right, makes sense.
And another one was a taxi.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, basically they sort of scrounged them all up.
They did a good job, because I fell in love with the cars in this movie.
Oh yeah, they're all. I mean, you could, even sort of the background thing. You got the.
Even his family car at the end is awesome. That thing's great. It looks like it still looks like it could get around a track. And
I think is it the motorbike and sidecar that they pull over.
Oh yeah, that's great.
Later on, that is such a cool thing. It's got that
when Goose gives him the get out of jail free ticket.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's an in joke, that get out of free ticket.
Oh really?
Yes. So the bike basically was the bikers, because they were all riding around with weapons on them. And stuff. They were given these notes. So if they were pulled over, they were given these notes that they could give to the police and say, we are currently filming a movie. These aren't real weapons. They're, blah, blah, blah. So that was called their get out of jail free card. And that was they put that in the movie as a joke to those.
Oh, okay.
Ad.
Huh. Interesting. So anyway, Max and Goose head out, eventually coming across the result of the earlier assaults. They first come across the guy who's runs away from the police. And he's clearly been assaulted. He's running for his life.
Well, he's got no trousers. He's got no trousers or pants on.
And he's bloody. He's clearly been assaulted sexually, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Or certainly that's implied anyway.
Yeah.
And he's running away, and Goose is just like, "Oh, what a turkey!" He's like, "You're such a turkey." Do you know that? And I'm like, dude, this guy is just consider what's just happened to this guy. But then of course they come across the remains of the car, and Max is like, "Oh god, let's keep going. There's more up ahead. We can get him in a minute."
Yeah.
They come across the car. They come across the girl who is chained up, She's hiding in the car, kind of trying to cover herself up. And then Johnny the boy, the asshole, is sat there out of his face on something. Drug fueled ramblings ensue. Where he mentions the Knight Rider, and of course, Goose goes to the girl, and he's trying to comfort her and trying to get her. He's like, look, it's going to be okay. We're here to help, and he's obviously you can see that the Goose jokes around a lot, but when it's him, he can joke about it. When it's someone else, he clearly cares for people. I mean, in here, he is like, in a minute, it's the only time you see him angry in the movie. In a minute, because of this kid and what he's done here. So he doesn't take everything as a joke. He's very easygoing with himself.
He loses it when he gets
freed. Released. Yeah, that's what I mean. He properly loses it, and it's
sorry, I thought you meant this specific bit.
No. I was just kind of thinking that he's very easing about himself.
Yes.
But he clearly does care about people, and he does care about justice, and that's the one thing that will get him going. But Max says, "Hey, Goose, do you remember that incident the other day? When I got that guy to drive into a truck." And Goose is like, yeah, and then of course, again, Johnny kind of rants about the Knight Rider and that they'll remember him, and they're like, oh, and it just, you get that great zoom in on Goose as Goose is like, well. And they arrest him and take him in. So ultimately he is held at the halls of justice. But I think doesn't Max get called in specifically to deal with Goose because this kid's going to get left, and they know full well they're like, we need you here to just deal with him when he finds out this is not going to be good. We see
you get that so you get two bits here with Bubba with Bubba. So after they've taken him off, you get it goes to the bikers.
Oh yeah, and he's like, I'm not going to go back for him, and he's like, I
says
won't.
Bubba, Johnny the boy's gone. He says you got to go back for me. He's like, no way. He's like, I'm not going back for that fucking idiot. And Tucker just goes, no, you will do it.
He's like, you're not doing it for him. You're doing it for me.
Yeah. And he's like really pissed off, but he does it. He goes.
He goes.
They drive off, and he goes back.
Yeah.
Then you get he's stood outside the halls of justice, standing leaning against the sort of fence. Yeah. And there are kids playing in the courtyard around the smashed up car.
I love when he says, they're like, what happened to this car? And he's like, maybe it was anxiety.
Yeah, he says maybe it's some kind
result of anxiety.
I love the way he says it as well.
His delivery, the whole movie, his delivery is amazing.
Yeah, and it's such a sort of a level tone almost all the time. He's
psychopath, proper psychopath. He's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you get these two lawyers.
Well, yeah, you first see Goose and what's his name, the guy from the start who now has a voice box because he's he obviously lost his voice in the accident. And Goose is kind of roughing him up, and he's got him chained up, and he's saying what's going to happen to him and whatnot. And the guy again, you just feel like this poor cop. He's just forever trying to deal with these assholes he works with. He's like, no, we need to get him ready. We need to get him ready.
He's called Charlie.
Oh, Charlie, thank you.
Yeah. Charlie and Roop, the partners, are they?
Yeah, and Charlie's like, "Oh, come on, we need to get him ready. We need to get him processed and ready." And Goose is having none of it. Max turns up and is told by Fifi, I think, that this is going down. You need to kind of deal with your boy.
Yep.
And yeah, you're right. So the lawyers, who might be my favorite characters in the movie, turn up because they're just awful.
Yeah.
They're like the stereotypical lawyers.
They're completely sort of, stereotypical sort of bureaucrat types.
And they're completely inappropriately dressed for everyone else in the movie. And then these guys in their full suits and,
Mm-hmm.
But they say, to Goose's utter horror and shock, they're like, you have no witnesses.
Yeah, no one turned up.
None. And Goose loses it, and Max is like, "There's no one." It's like The whole town didn't show up. The girl didn't show up. The guy didn't show up. Literally nobody showed up.
Yeah.
We have nothing. You know, like these people are so afraid of this bike gang. None of them showed up.
Yeah.
So he's off scot-free. No evidence.
Yeah, Goose is like, no, I'll just finish him now.
Yeah, well, Goose gets his nightstick, doesn't he? And he goes to properly, you know.
That's the way we can let this fucker walk out of here.
And he does get a couple of hits in on him. He takes him to the ground and hits him a couple of times. And then, of course, you got the lawyer. It's like, oh, you know, the judge will hear of this.
Completely inappropriate behaviour. we'll see about this later on.
Yeah.
And of course, Johnny the boy's shouting out, yeah, well, we know who you are, we know where you live, we know your names.
Yeah. He's like, we know who you are, because Goose is shouting threats back at him as well. Because Goose says, oh, we'll see you on the road. We'll see you out on the road. You know, so they're both shouting threats at each other. And
I do like that you get Fifi says, as long as the paper works, right, you can do what you want out there.
Yeah, well, you get the impression that Fifi's like, okay, like, the age of heroes, even in my brain, is now gone.
Yeah.
Go fucking murder these fools. Just make sure the paperwork's clean, you know? Mm-hmm. Like, well, I guess because Fifi, you get the impression he is an optimist. And he sees like, oh, we're gonna, you know, effectively it's the Old West, and we're gonna bring justice to the Old West. You know, we're gonna bring justice to this to the outback in Australia, this dystopia. We're gonna bring justice to it, and we're gonna fix everything. Yeah. And you almost feel like this is the day the law died for him, where these lawyers have come in, and like this guy is responsible for like rape, assault, God knows what, him and his gang, and they've just got away with all of it. So you feel like he's broken now, and he's like, do you know what? Just don't get caught.
Yeah.
And just go deal with them. Just take them down, you know. Because I guess he's realized now, he's like, well, the law won't do a thing about it. So we're just going to have to take justice into our own hands. We're going to have to go out there and just take them out.
Frontier justice.
Yeah, frontier justice, effectively. Yeah. I love how Bubba just fucking grabs him. Yeah. Just like takes him out. He's like, "Come on, you."
Yeah, you can tell Bubba absolutely.
Oh God, despises him.
Yeah,
absolutely despises him. He heads to the. He's taken to. They go to the beach, don't they? The bikers.
Yeah.
And Bubba turns up with Johnny. And the Kundalini and Mudguts are pissing about with this shop model.
Yeah, with the mannequin.
Doll. The mannequin, yeah. And Bubba kind of whispers.
I like the way Toe Cutter sat there like he's on his like throne, isn't he? He's
yeah, and he's got like tinfoil or something over him. He's got like
he's got like a tinfoil blanket over him, and there's, like...
he looks like he's just been in like an accident or something. You know? Trying to keep him warm, even though it's like a desert beach. And Bubba whispers something to Toe Cutter, and then Toe Cutter shoots his double barrel into the air, and says that, you know, hey, he's like, Mudguts, get out of the way.
Yeah.
Kundalini, put her against the post, and they put this shop mannequin against the post.
Yeah.
And he says, you know, someone here is not who they say. There's, you know, not who they say they are. You know, someone here is working for the Bronze.
Bronzes, yeah.
And before, so he gives the gun to Bubba, right? Or he gives Bubba the look, and Bubba goes to do it.
Bubba's got that really cool
pistol with the scope.
It's a Mauser, isn't it? With his broom handle, and he's got the really cool case, the wooden case that I think, if I remember right, that might be one of the wooden cases that you can put on as a rest.
Oh, okay.
As a you know, what's the bloody word I'm looking for?
Like a butt.
It connects to the handle, and you can use it as a you know,
kind of like a butt.
Yes, the butt. Thank you. A stock.
Yeah, there we go.
Stock. Yeah, I think so. I think that is anyway. But either way, it's fucking cool.
Yeah, very cool. But before he gets a chance to use it, of course, Johnny, in a desperate attempt to prove himself, grabs a shotgun and shoots her.
Yeah.
And he says, if you're going to do it, you got to do it large or something like that.
Yeah.
And Toe Cutter grabs him and says, we're going to go for a little walk, sir.
Yeah. Basically, you just shut your mouth, isn't it? It's like you've got...
Keep your pretty mouth shut.
Yeah.
And he does his tie up,
Yeah. Takes to the water, doesn't he? With it.
And it's clear that Toe Cutter doesn't necessarily trust Johnny anymore.
No.
Because for all he knows, he's like, well, for all I know, they could have let you go to spy on us. You kind of feel like Toe Cutter's like, now he needs to prove his loyalty.
Yeah. But I think you get that impression when he tells Bubba to go look for him. He does say to him, Bubba says something along the lines of, "Oh, he doesn't know anything," and it's like he'll
never learn, and Toe Cutter's like, "We will teach it to him, Bubba."
Yeah, we will teach him. And when he put the shotgun in his mouth, I think he cut his mouth with that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes. Again, it's a really cool shot of him though. Stood sort of, with like almost waist high in the water, with the shotgun on his shoulder and his arm on Johnny.
Yeah,
it's a really cool shot.
Yeah, amazing. So I guess it's hard to judge the passing of time in this film. But you can kind of tell by Goose's injury healing, his broken leg. It's quite a while.
Over the course of the movie, I'm guessing it's like a month maybe or so.
Yeah, maybe a month or a couple of months. Like he had a fracture maybe and it's got better rather than a full broken leg. And now, he's kind of at the point now where he's got like a bandage around it, but he can kind of get around. He's back on his bike fully and whatnot. So he goes and to a bar to watch the thinnest woman in the world sing a song.
He drives out of the thing, doesn't he? And you can see that Johnny's in a car.
Oh, that's waiting. Right. Yeah. Johnny is waiting in a car. Yeah, and they follow him to this bar.
That singer always reminds me of.
She's a genuine singer, I think.
Yeah.
In Australia,
she always reminds me of what's her name? The actress from Shining.
Oh yeah, I can kind of see that.
She always reminds me of her.
Yeah, I mean she's very pretty. She's just very thin. Yes. I always think, oh my god, she's so thin. Amazing voice though.
What a weird fucking song though. The Licorice
Road. Yeah. The song is weird, but she's got a great voice.
Yeah. She's clearly sexy.
She's doesn't she like because it feels to me like that song. It feels like she's changed the lyrics for Goose while watching because she starts talking about leathered up biker or something. And it's like okay, or leathered up cop.
Speaking of the leather, so I like this as well. So Goose, or should we say Steve Beasley? He's the only one wearing actual leathers.
Well, I guess he was the only one on a bike, so
they can only afford one set of leathers.
Yeah, give it to the guy on a bike.
They're like cheap vinyl.
Okay.
Which if you can see on some of the shots of the guys, they're the knees and that have split where they were like really cheap and nasty.
See, I kind of always took that to just be like, well, they're just so underfunded that all of their stuff is knackered, so it kind of accidentally lends itself to the
it just looks like knackered, used uniforms. That's just what it is really, isn't it? That's how you look at
it. So while he's enjoying this song, and ultimately ends up sleeping with this woman, they are sabotaging the bike. Outside. They cut the brake line, I think, or something, don't they?
Yeah, I think they fuck the brakes up in some way, remove the disc or something. Yeah.
So Goose gets up the next morning, heads out at high speed the next day.
Yeah, I think that's one of the good things about this movie is that you do really get a feel fucking speed on this.
Oh god, yeah. It does a great.
Especially on this bit of him just riding along the road is beautiful.
Yeah, it really is that kind of open road look. And again, it's that psychopath of a cameraman just going for it. But he ends up taking this corner, and obviously brakes fail. He just flies out into a field.
Yeah.
Lucky for him, no real injuries at this stage. And it's kind of fun because it lulls you into a false sense of security where you think, oh, he's screwed now.
Yeah.
But he's fine. And then the U-Haul guy turns up, the tow truck, or the truck, and he puts his bike on the back and gives him the truck, and then the guy's going to go away on his on his bicycle. And you kind of think, oh, okay, he got away with it. But of course their plan now is that they then knock him off the road in the truck.
Yeah, and that's when the guy chucks
off the bridge. Yeah.
Into the windscreen.
So Goose crashes off the road and is pinned.
That's that thing.
Oh god, yeah.
Flips.
Yeah. And so he's now pinned, isn't he? He's pinned underneath the
upside down.
Yeah.
Pinned into the car. And when he's talking to the guy who gave him the pickup, that
he's like, "Are you all right?" And he's like, "Couldn't be righter."
Yeah, and it's not just the seat belt; it's a full on fucking harness he gets.
Well, yeah, they do make a point of showing how
he gets
he ain't getting out of that, you know.
So he's completely fucked. He can't get out. The car is pissing fuel.
Yeah, yeah, and he sees the fuel, and we see Toe Cutter and Johnny. Toe Cutter asks Johnny for a light, and Johnny obviously obliges, and he puts the candle out, doesn't he?
Johnny's got he's got a light around his neck, hasn't he? And there's a bit when you initially see him following Goose when he wakes up from the car, he actually burns his arm hair with the lights that you've seen, and Toe Cutter stops him with the lighter and gives him a match.
Yeah, but of course he puts the match out as soon as he's lit the cigarette, and he's like, no, do it again.
Yeah,
and he's like, this is, I can't remember what he says. It's like, this is your moment, or this is a moment.
Mm-hmm.
And of course he's looking at Goose, and Goose looks terrified because he knows what's coming. There's gas everywhere, and I love it. Even Johnny is like, doesn't want to do it. He's like, oh, look at him, he looks stupid, doesn't he? He's a stupid man now. He's nothing. And then Toe Cutter's like, no, you've got to do this. And eventually, doesn't he call him like gutter scum or something like that?
Yeah.
And of course, basically bullies Johnny into throwing the match.
Yeah, well, I don't even think
dropping the match.
They see he drops it.
Yeah,
really.
It's not clear. Yeah, maybe just dropped it. And yeah, of course, the car goes up.
And I like you, poor old Steve Beasley. His eyes are really red in that thing because apparently he was sat in that car for well over an hour.
Oh God, can you imagine in that heat in Australia?
Yeah.
In leather?
Yeah.
Oh.
So yeah, he was not having a good time while they were filming that.
I bet those leathers stank.
Yeah.
The only pair for the whole shoot. Oh. I bet he was glad to get set on fire. Get me out of here. So, unbelievably, Goose survives this and is taken to hospital. We see Max enter. Everybody tries to stop Max going in. Yeah. Like, everybody. But he's having none of it. He goes in, and you can hear the breathing machine, the iron lung or whatever it is they've got keeping him alive.
Yeah.
And as I said, you've got that, they've got him in, I guess maybe it is an iron lung, but you've got this cage over him. So you see the shape isn't human, but you can see there is some form in there through the shadow, because it's quite well lit, that shot, where you can kind of see a shadow underneath, but you can't see in.
Yeah.
And of course Max approaches, we get the hand falls out, and obviously that's quite shocking to Max to see this burnt hand, fingers missing and all sorts. And then you get this wonderful transitional wipe that they do where Max pulls back the sheets, and then it's got a close up on his face, but then it wipes to a close up of him completely shocked. Does that kind of wavy wipe?
It's the wave that I
but it's so effective.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the police are here. I don't know if you can hear that.
Always stayed with me in this movie.
Yeah.
That one. The
oh yeah. To me, this shot was so shocking. This stayed with me as a kid. This really haunted me. This scene. This was like properly like whoa.
And the other one is we'll get to later.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. But this scene, probably more than anything else in the movie, this was the one that was like, wow. Because I was having a real good time in this movie with Goose. Goose was great. I was having fun with Goose.
Yeah, because you sort of, you, I think as a naive kid, you still sort of think, well, maybe you'll be all right.
You think maybe he'll be okay
until
you get to the iron lung bit, and you're like, oh, okay, no, he's not going to be okay.
Did you know about the original script for number 2?
That he was going to be Lord Humongous.
He was going to be Humongous, yeah.
I don't know how that would have worked. They would have had to have kept his gammy arm. That would have been weird.
Well, I mean, Humongous is sort of scarred and burned.
Not
I guess
really. He's like practically naked the whole movie.
Yeah.
So I guess he would have been wearing different stuff. But
I mean, I think it was dropped quite quickly. So I think, my guess is that he would have probably looked
a bit different. I imagine he would have looked more like Immortan Joe. In
maybe
Fury Road, where he's kind of obviously knackered and can't breathe properly and has issues.
Yeah.
I kind of like the idea. It's an interesting idea to play.
It's a cool idea. I'm glad they didn't do it, but
me too.
It's a cool idea.
I kind of assume that Goose obviously died.
I would presume so.
Because I'm guessing he's on life support here, and once the world goes to shit.
Yeah. I would. That's always been my presumption, is that he will die eventually. There's no way he's.
Or that Max went back and killed him at some point. Just put him out.
Yeah,
of misery.
maybe.
But yeah, so Max is obviously now destroyed. His wife wakes up one morning, can't find him there in bed, and finds him out on the beach.
Yeah.
And then he says, I just can't do this anymore. I'm gonna end up like Goose, or worse, I'm gonna end up like these crazies,
Yeah.
And he goes to see Fifi, who at this point is watering his plants.
Yeah.
It's just like the best get up ever, this guy. He just looks so ridiculous. I like how
weirdly cool.
Yeah, I know, he pulls it off, totally. He pulls it off.
He really
100% pulls it off. I wouldn't mess with this guy. He looks terrifying.
Dude's like 6'3" and built like a brick privy. I mean,
yeah. And he seems lovely.
Yeah.
He seems lovely, but he could definitely kill you.
Yeah.
I like how when Max approaches him, he completely ignores him.
Because
like Fifi knows. I think he knows full well.
He knows what's coming.
He knows what's coming.
Yeah.
Max taps the letter on his shoulder. Fifi turns around and he's like, I'm out. I'm done. And Fifi's like, hey, look, Goose, he died how he knew he wasn't long for this world. He was pushing it. He was always pushing it. Even Goose would say it was, he lasted longer than he could have hoped, really, living the way he did. Sorry, I forgot to say we've got that line that I think really stuck with me as well after the scene with Goose, where Max leaves the room and he's like, I don't know what that thing in there is, but it's not Goose.
It's not Goose.
Oh God.
We also get, actually, speaking of really good shots, is that when you get the doctors and the nurses in the room talking about whether he, whether he's going to survive and stuff like that, and they're pretty much saying he's done for, and you get that really cool. The camera pulls back out of the room, and Max is leaning against the door frame, and you just see his face.
I thought that was his wife later on, or is it both?
No, it's
is it both?
You're right. You're right.
Because they say they lost the kid and that she was going to lose.
Yes. No, you're right. I was thinking.
But they may do it again. You might be right there. There might be some doctors.
You're right. That's the bit later.
Okay.
You're right.
That is an amazing scene. You're absolutely right.
Yes.
Love that scene.
That's my fault.
No, that's okay. It is a wonderful scene. That
Getting ahead of ourselves.
Yeah. No, that's okay. We always do this. This happens. So yeah, he says I'm done, and Fifi's like, look, take some time off. Yeah. He's like, take a couple of weeks, grow a beard, yeah. And Max kind of, I mean, I don't even know if he takes the leave. I guess he kind of takes the leave, but he's like, I'm not coming back.
Yeah.
Like, I'll take the paycheck for a couple of weeks, but I'm not changing my mind.
Yeah, he sort of gives him a look when he says, take some time, and I think he sort of thinks about it, but then he's like, no, I'm not coming back.
Yeah.
And again, Fifi says about bringing heroes back and stuff, and he still does believe. He still has that he still thinks he can make a difference.
Yes. Yeah. So they go on a lovely holiday.
Yeah.
It looks like a really fun time. It looks like they have a really nice time for a bit. We get this nice we get the other music. There's two themes in this I feel like there's two songs in this entire film.
Yeah.
What is the chase music? And what is the love song?
Yeah.
Which happens a couple of times. Usually whenever she's on screen.
Yes.
And we see that they have this holiday. They take this car. Either they already owned it, or they bought it, or they rented it. But they get this lovely, family car. Is very 70s family car, but it still looks like muscle. It still looks like it could go on the road if it needed to.
It's got that really cool sci-fi.
That's great.
Paint job on the side as well.
I love all those old paint jobs. Why don't they do that more these days?
I remember going to a car show when I was a kid, and there was this van that had this amazing full-on barbarian and dragon painted on the side.
It.
Fucking one of the coolest things I've ever seen. It's so cool.
Yeah, amazing.
It is very 70s.
Yeah, but great. I love the 70s anyway, so it's like it's fine.
I'm talking this was when I was a kid, so it wasn't that far away from the 70s.
Oh, that's true. Actually, yeah, I suppose it was.
It would have been early 80s that I went, so.
Yeah, but then it's still the 70s, isn't it? Early 80s is still basically the 70s.
Yes.
It's like the 90s. You see stuff from the early 90s, and you're like, oh yeah, it's still basically the 80s. Fashion doesn't change overnight. It's like, oh no, now it's the 1st of January 1980. It's completely different. All of our fashion has changed. It's like, no.
Yeah.
It's pretty much going to look that way for quite a while. But yeah, they have this lovely holiday. They go on they go to the beach. They have ice creams and do fun stuff.
Yeah, with Sprog. I forgot the kid. I don't think he ever gets named. They just
call him Sprog. Yeah. It's very natural though. Couples don't talk that way.
Huh?
Like if you've got one son, you wouldn't be like, "Oh, I'm going to take John to the beach while you stay here."
Yeah.
You're going to have a nickname for him, or you're just going to say, "Oh, we're going." You don't say his name necessarily, But anyway, they're having a lovely time. And then how do they end up finding? It's pure happenstance, isn't it? It's just
so yeah.
It's the beach, isn't it?
They need to fix a wheel.
Yeah.
So they stop off at a garage to get the wheel fixed.
Yeah, with this guy who keeps trying to replace other parts of the car, and
yeah,
he's
clearly one of those dudes who's rips parts off and stuff, and
yeah, doesn't he even say, he's like, I've got some rims if you want them. Don't know where I got them, but I got them. It's like, I don't know where I got these. They asked me where I found them, but I found them. And we discover soon. I mean, he replaces parts on the biker gang stuff as well. He's obviously in with the wrong crowd. I guess he probably gets delivered some questionable. Yeah.
So he basically, so she says she's going to
get some ice cream, doesn't she?
Yeah.
And he says, there's a place down on the beach.
Yeah. So she goes down with Sprog,
and he helps. Max ends up helping fix his bike or something. They're like pissing about with the bike.
Yes. Yeah.
And she heads down there, and by pure happenstance, the biker gang are there. Mm-hmm. You don't get the impression that because I mean, you did get Johnny's prior warning that he knows who they are and they know who they are.
Yeah.
But you don't get the impression that I don't think they were following Max.
No,
this is just pure coincidence.
Like it was just sheer dumb luck.
Yeah.
That they were in the same place at the same time.
Yeah. And you get the two rapey guys.
Mm-hmm.
It's like my favorite flavor, woman.
Yeah.
And of course, Toe Cutter looks up and he knows immediately. They buy ice cream, and then they're approached by or followed by the gang, and Toe Cutter starts playing with the kid, playing with her, like running alongside, being creepy and weird. Is such a great performance.
Yeah.
And then eventually he kind of backs her into a corner and he's like, "May I?" And he like takes the ice cream and starts licking it. She smiles because obviously she realizes where this is going. And then he kind of smiles back, and then she kicks him in the nuts and puts the ice cream in his face.
Yep.
And runs for the car.
Yep.
She speeds off as Kundalini, the idiot, decides it'd be a great idea to wrap a chain around the top of the car as it's going like 90 mile an hour up the road.
Yeah.
And surprise, surprise, it doesn't go well for him.
I also love the fact that she runs into the garage and she just shouts at Max.
Yeah, she's like, "Now, we're leaving now."
And Max is like, "What is it?" And then he's like, "No, just get in the car." And he doesn't really argue. He just like,
no. It's very realistic, isn't it? It's like he knows. He's like, "Okay, yeah, I know this is serious. I need to go."
Yeah,
fine.
And of course they leave the tire behind.
Yeah, he's like, "Oh, you left your wheel. You left your wheel." And then of course we do see that the biker gang are following.
Yeah.
They pull into this place where I guess it's the place where they were staying.
Yeah, so I think there's all. First of all, you get Toe Cutter basically asks, goes in and grabs him by the face, doesn't he? And
yes, yeah.
And the guy says, "Oh, they're just people passing through." He says, "But I think they were saying they were heading up north."
Yeah.
So he sort of gets a general direction, I guess, or what it is. And yeah, so I presume
their family. Is it her family or something?
Yeah, I think May must be
a relation
or something, maybe.
Yeah, I get a feeling that she's her relation of some kind.
Yeah, and I love Sheila Florence, who plays.
She's great.
She's fantastic. I knew her from Prisoner Cell Block H.
Yeah.
So I used to watch Prisoner Cell Block H with my mum when I was a kid, and she was in 404 episodes of Prisoner Cell Block H.
Jesus.
Yeah, it's like, that's fucking impressive.
That's a lot of episodes.
And also, even more impressive is during one of the scenes where she's running along with a shotgun, she fell and she broke her leg.
Oh, in this one?
Yeah, in this.
Oh.
And she came back and basically just carried on. She was like
different breed,
all plastered up, but she just she said, they all said, oh, maybe you shouldn't come back and that. Like, no, she was completely professional. She came back, she carried on with this broken leg.
Wow.
So she was great. And it's actually her hand that you see. Goose's hand that comes down. It's her hand.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
Yeah.
Wow. So they pull up there, and he says it's going to be all right, and the woman's like, it'll be fine. They won't find you now. You've got away. Creepy guys, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
But of course the dog. The dog is like, I have found a treat.
Yes. Yeah, you even get that scene as well, the sort of idyllic sort of as they're driving along.
Yeah.
Stop at a farm sort of thing and get a dog.
This lovely farm, and it's gonna be fine. They've escaped. And then of course she's like, "What have you got there, boy?" And of course it's Kundalini's hand.
Yeah.
Still grasping the chain. So they call the local cops, and they're like, "Well, it's lost property if no one claims it. Don't worry about it."
Lost property. We're going to put it down as lost property.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that this dude, he's in the same uniform. He's got the same uniform, but he's got that he's got that sort of cowboy hat sort of thing.
Yeah, it's almost like the Texas Rangers versus the it's like, well, we just wear silly hats here, so That's the difference between our uniforms.
Yeah.
Yeah. So okay, I guess it's fine.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then she, you know, again the false sense of security sets in. She ultimately, I think Max is cutting wood or something or fixing something, and she decides to go to the beach. Sprog's playing on the floor near Max.
Yeah.
Or near the old lady. And Jesse heads to the beach to sunbathe. And
she mentions what's his name? The guy. It's like her son or something, but I think he's disabled, and she's like, oh, if he's there,
if he's out there,
just don't worry about him. He's just a baby, sort of thing.
Now, is that the same actor who plays Blaster? Because it kind of looks like him, and I was never sure.
Oh dear.
I was never sure. It may not be. I could be wrong. I just know he likes to reuse actors quite a lot.
Yeah.
It was certainly during this period. It was kind of his thing. But anyway, so she
Benno, the name Benno, Max Fairchild. I don't know whether that's
not sure, but anyway, she goes and sunbathes for a bit, and on the way back, she's walking through the woods and becomes convinced that she's being followed.
Yeah,
and in fact, we know she is because we see, like, biker leathers and biker outfits. Like, she's definitely being followed by someone other than this guy.
Mm-hmm.
And she runs and runs and runs, and, you know, ultimately it's quite a tense scene, but, you know, we do eventually see that it is actually this guy also that's chasing after her, and he's being nice. He just wants to be friendly. He's just, you know, he's just quite simple, and he just wants to be friends. He doesn't understand.
Yeah.
She comes screaming to Max. The old lady's like, oh, it's just him. He's just his way. And she's like, oh, you know, you're always doing this. You need to just stop scaring the lady. She's like, Max, no, like, it wasn't just him.
There were other people there.
There are other people there. So Max takes off with a shotgun. And the guy follows with Max. But then, of course, she realizes that Sprog's gone.
Yeah.
She's like, where's Sprog? Like, Sprog's missing. So while Max and Co are away, Sprog has been kidnapped, I guess, by the biker gang, and we see Toe Cutter, who says, you know, Kundalini wants his arm back.
Yeah, that is Kundalini. Kundalini wants his hand back. And I love he has that whole sort of thing about,
I hate guns.
You've got such a pretty face, and
God, if you were to lose the face,
you know, having this pretty face, but what happens if it gets suddenly messed up?
Yeah, it's like, what if you were to lose the face?
Yeah,
it's so creepy. It's such a good performance.
He's like, suddenly acquires a Scottish accent as well. It's like,
yeah. He puts accents on the whole way through, though, doesn't he? He does different accents.
And I love it when she says, "What do you want from me?" And he says, "Don't change the subject."
Yeah.
And then May turns up with a shotgun, and he's like,
"I hate guns.
I don't like guns."
She tells them all to get in the shed.
Yeah.
Or the garage door, I suppose.
Initially, they're like, "Yeah, fuck off, lady."
Yeah, but she's like, "No, I'm serious."
She does. Yeah, she fires, and they take her a little bit more seriously this time.
Yeah. And she tells Jesse to run, which of course she does. She takes Sprog and she runs as fast as she can. But the gang obviously ultimately kick the door and overpower the old lady. What was the old lady's name? I always forget her name. May, thank you. And chase after her. And
yeah, she gets in the van, but the van, there is something wrong with the van, isn't there?
Haven't they like done something, haven't they? Or is it just knackered? It might just be knackered.
Yeah.
So she ends up running on this bridge. It's kind of like a bridge, isn't it? There's she's running with Sprog. And then we just see May running after the bikers. The bikers are on their bikes. May tries to stop the bikers. She shoots at them. They just ride straight past her, and basically run over Jesse and Sprog.
Yeah.
And again, it's one of those things. It's not gratuitous. We don't need to see it.
No, that's it. It's
enough. You see the shoe, and it's like, okay,
you get the shot of her running. You get the shot of the bikes, and then you clearly, you don't see it, but you clearly know that they hit them, and you get that shot of the road, and I think it's a shoe. Is it a ball?
Yeah,
I think it's a ball that Sproul was holding. It just bounced along, and that shot is again like the one with the wing is always stuck in my head.
Yeah, it's absolutely the same with me. It's such an effective scene. It doesn't need to be gratuitous. It tells you everything you need to know.
Yep, you don't see any blood or anything. It's
no.
Just, all you see is just the empty road with the shoe and the ball. It's a wonderful shot.
Yeah,
really brilliant.
So Max eventually turns up. May is distraught.
Yeah.
Max runs up and we just hear him screaming.
Yeah.
We then cut to that wonderful scene you were talking about with the doctors talking about the fact that they lost the kid, that she is screwed up, all kinds of screwed up, because they're saying she's going to lose the legs and like God knows what.
Yeah, I think she's got like kidney damage and liver damage.
Now, weirdly, in this movie, Max leaves, takes revenge, and we don't really get resolution on what happens to her. It's actually Mad Max 2 where they make it clear that she died. She died after.
Yeah.
I guess here it's implied that she probably died after.
Yeah, it's the way the doctors are talking.
They're not very positive about her surviving. No. Yeah, for sure.
And it's that shot of him in the doorway is wonderful. It's a great shot.
It's amazing. And his reaction
on his face.
Yeah, it says everything. So Fifi was right. He does come back briefly.
Yeah.
We see he comes in and he takes the Pursuit Special.
Yep. Gets his uniform on.
Gets his uniform on. Takes the Pursuit Special and heads out for revenge. So we then kind of get various. Well, no. First of all, he takes the car and heads to the mechanic, doesn't he? And the mechanic makes the terrible mistake as Max is kind of walking into the garage of saying, "Oh, Toe Cutter, is that you?" Like, "Oh, the bikes are going to take a little while, guys."
Yeah.
And then of course Max pulls him out and he's like, "What are you doing, you idiot?" And he's like, "Right, I'm going to give you some names. You're going to nod." Like, Toe Cutter, Kundalini. And of course he finds out roughly where they are and what they're doing. We see the gang are doing the Mad Max sequel thing, stealing gas on the road. It's a very Mad Max. This is what we will see in every Mad Max film from now on. This is the first time we see it. They're stealing gas from a truck. And obviously Max is watching, and he starts picking them off. One by one. You kind of get the impression until it's really only Bubba, Johnny, and Toe Cutter left, right? In the end, he kind of montages a lot of them to death.
Yeah, you get the impression that over a period,
because he knocks a bunch of them off the bridge, and stuff like that.
Yeah, and you get the impression.
Yeah, again, it's a period of time, isn't it? You get the impression he's picking them off.
You get
over time.
These wonderful shots of him, like in rain and in daylight. And
I love the shot of him just watching on the bridge, just watching them as they're going and stuff.
Yeah, and I love the one of him in the rain at night. That one's because you can see how tired he is.
Yeah, he's just exhausted,
barely keeping awake, and but he's
revenge is all that's keeping him. Keeping him going. So ultimately, it kind of comes down to the three of them versus Max. And Bubba gets a shot in on Max because Max comes across Johnny, right?
First of all, I think they fake him out, don't they? So one of them pretends that
I think it's Johnny, isn't it? It's Johnny. pretends.
I think it's Johnny. I think it's one of the others.
Oh, is it? I thought it came down to just
think it's
the
one
three
of the others.
Okay.
And he gets out of the car. He thinks he goes to sort of see him, and of course
and then Bubba shoots him, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then so he shoots him. He goes down.
Yeah, Bubba shoots him in the leg. He goes down. He's then reaching for his shotgun and gets run over. He gets his arm run over. And Toe Cutter is taking this serious now because I guess Max has killed enough of their guys, and he's like, Bubba, stop messing around. He's like, Bubba, just kill him. And Bubba's very confident in his ability to take this guy out. And he's like, I got this. Yeah. So he rides after Max with the intention of running him over. But Max shoots him with the shotgun.
Yeah, he manages to get on the shotgun.
And you see Bubba is upset by this. He obviously did Toe Cutter's obviously upset by this. Bubba, he likes Bubba.
Yeah.
And Bubba is now dead. It's just Johnny and Toe Cutter left. They speed off, and of course Max stumbles, falls over a couple of times. I love the fact that you see him kind of really struggling, but he's all revenge. He's like, no matter how injured he gets, this guy is he's like a T-800 now. As long as he functions, he's coming after you, and he eventually makes it to the car.
And I do love the fact that knee injury stays with him.
Yeah, he's got it in Mad Max 2 onwards, right?
In all of the Mad Max movies, he's got the sort of the leg brace on.
He's always got it. Yeah. It's a nice bit of continuity that. I don't know if he does. Does he have it in Fury Road?
I think so.
Yeah,
pretty sure he does.
I remember him being a bit more agile in Fury Road, but yeah, you may be right. I need to rewatch that soon. Certainly before I see Furiosa, I need to rewatch that. It's been a while.
Yeah.
So yes, we then get another chase as Max chases after Toe Cutter, and ultimately does the fake out. Toe Cutter keeps goes as fast as he can, but of course the pursuit special has the turbo, so he engages the fake turbo and catches up to him, and then basically gets him to ride into a truck whilst Max somehow avoided doing the same thing, even though he's right behind him. It's weird, but it looks very cool. You see the crash, and then obviously Max is obviously pulled off at the last minute, I guess, is the implication, because he's ended up behind the truck, so the truck's gone past him. So I guess he pulled out somehow.
And it's a spectacular crunch as well.
Oh my god.
It's absolutely mangled under that truck.
Yeah. That was
They paid the truck driver $50 to do that.
Jesus.
And he was worried. Well, one of the funny things I love is, which you can clearly see, is he didn't want his truck to get messed up.
Oh god.
So they built a shield. So the front, you can actually see that it's basically just painted on. It's a shield that they built.
It works though.
And they painted it to make it look like it's the actual front.
Yeah,
it's
pretty
cool.
effective. It's pretty effective.
You get the eye bulging scene as well.
Of course.
His eye bulges when just before he hits the truck.
Well, you get the impression it's like, we spent quite a bit of our budget on this eye popping effect. We're definitely going to use it twice. We use it a couple of times for sure. So Toe Cutter is now dead. Only Johnny remains, and unfortunately for Johnny, unsure as to whether he's telling the truth here, whether he happened across this accident or whether he caused it. But he's scavenging these dead bodies at the scene of this crash. Max shows up behind him with a shotgun. And
gives him cuffs, tells him to cuff him.
Yeah, he gives him the cuffs, tells him to put the cuffs on. I was never quite entirely sure whether Johnny actually recognizes him at first or whether he thinks he's just a cop. But he soon realizes that he's in a world of trouble.
He's clearly in a bloody drug head, so it might be that he doesn't fucking recognize
I think something registers in his brain when he's told to put the cuffs around his ankle.
Yeah.
At that point, he's like, that's not right. Even in my drug-fueled stupor, that's not right. Something's happening here.
So you cuff your ankle, though.
So, of course, he drags him over to the wreck and cuffs his ankle and then cuffs his ankle to this wreck. He basically sets up this fuel pan. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, well, he's like pleading for his life, and he's like, saying you can't do this, and it's like, I didn't do this. It's like I came across it when it's here, and Max is busy with some tape and
he's MacGyvering this.
Yeah, he's got a headlight, and he's setting up the fuel leak that he's putting underneath it. It's like collecting it. He's setting up something really nice.
I always, I mean, it's such a great ending, but I always thought it'd be funny if there was a sketch where he does all of this, goes back to the car, and then it doesn't explode, and he has to stop, get out the shotgun, and just go back and blow his head off. Like, oh, for God's sake.
Yeah, he basically, he tells him,
doesn't he? He says like that's gonna explode in like 2 minutes. You can cut through. He gives him a hacksaw, and he's like, you can cut through that in you can cut through the cuffs in 5 minutes, but you can cut through your leg in a minute. Yeah. Something like that, isn't it?
Pretty much.
And just leaves him to it. And of course, we have learned one thing this entire film from Johnny, and that is that Johnny is an absolute coward. There's no way he's cutting through his own leg.
No.
Not gonna happen. So Max drives away as the explosion goes off. Max doesn't even look, flinch, nothing. And I love that shot. It's just he's dead inside. He's just driving dead inside as the explosion happens. And
it's one of the ultimate walk away.
It's drive away from an explosion. Yeah. And that's Mad Max.
Yeah.
Like I said, we find out his wife died in the sequel. Presumably she died before this stuff happened. I guess that was his last straw. And we continue on from there. The thing gets retconned pretty heavily from the second one onwards, but I think it still works. Like I said before, I love George Miller's reasoning.
Yeah.
Of like, oh, it's just stories in the wasteland, and they're all told differently and exaggerated, and
Yeah.
I
did actually see,
and even this, you can kind of like once you get to like Mad Max 2 and the post-nuclear apocalypse onwards, you can almost see this movie as completely untrue and just this mythology that people have around how Max started before the war, and this is what drove him to be Mad Max, but we don't really know. It's all hearsay, and they've heard this crazy story, and
the backstory that everybody tells.
Yeah. So it really works, that reasoning. I really like it. And I've always liked this this idea because they kind of touch on it a few times. Obviously, in the second one, he has the pursuit special. It gets blown up.
Yeah.
In Fury Road, he has the pursuit special again, and it crashes. And in the video game, he gets the pursuit rebuilds the pursuit special, the one that does crash. I think that is in theory what you were meant to be doing. There's also a comic book series where he has the pursuit special, and in Mad Max 3, the idea was, and I think you can kind of see it, although it was a lot of it was cut. But the thing he's traveling on at the start, with the cows pulling the wagon. The wagon is full of car parts, and the idea was that he was rebuilding the pursuit special.
Yeah.
So I've always liked this idea that Max, his connection to his past and his humanity is that car. It's the car. So he's always looking to go back to that. Yeah, he's always going back to that V8. That's his thing. And it kind of gives the excuse, because you're like, in the post-apocalypse when fuel is scarce, why are you using these goddamn cars? This is the worst thing in the world. But for Max, I think it makes sense because he has this unhealthy obsession with this car now. That's his thing.
Yeah, I think that works.
So he's always going to, if he can, rebuild that car and work towards rebuilding that car.
In Fury Road, it gets absolutely mangled. There's no way you're rebuilding that.
Well, it self-destructs in the second one, so yeah, I mean... In fact, doesn't it? It turns up at the end of Fury Road. The War Boys have got it by the end. They've put massive tyres on it.
It gets crushed between two lorries, doesn't it?
Yeah. It gets crushed again. It crashes horribly at the start, and then it's repurposed and crashed again. But I guess he finds another frame, right?
I guess so.
I guess the idea is that there's probably a lot of Ford Falcons around. Not many V8s,
Yeah.
but a lot of Ford Falcons. So there's always a Ford Falcon to cannibalize.
I really loved the game. I thought the game was fantastic.
The game was way better than it had any right to be.
That's one of the games I've 100%ed.
Oh really? Wow.
Yeah, 100%ed that game. Absolutely loved it. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's great. And I like is it Chum Bucket?
Chum Bucket's great. Yeah,
it's a great character. He's great fun.
He's brilliant. I love it. Yeah, he's cool, and I like it when he's like on the car and like moving around from side to side and stuff. He's like a mutant R2D2. He's like a mutant R2D2.
Yeah. Great fun.
That's a great game. Yeah, really good.
Very underrated game for sure.
Yeah, and I think it still holds up pretty well too. It's been out for a while, so
yeah,
and that leads quite nicely into Fury Road.
Yeah, because he's rebuilt the car at that, or he's reclaimed the car at that point.
Yeah,
because that's right. Because at the start of the game, he's just rebuilt it, hasn't he? And then he gets it stolen.
Yeah,
and then by the end, he's reclaimed it. He reclaims it, but then drives it straight into the. So he knackers it immediately after getting it back. But yes, it does lead quite well. It's like the universe is telling him to move on, but he won't.
Yeah.
Every time he gets the car, the universe says no car. But he's determined to go out there.
Yeah, but like you said, it's like maybe he wouldn't have a reason to carry on if he doesn't have.
I think that's it. I think it is some unhealthy obsession with that car and that part of his life. It's like ties him to his wife. It ties him to Goose. It ties him to his old life as a cop. It kind of keeps him there.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's nothing without vengeance past this point, so he kind of needs that,
Yeah. I saw recently that there's a fan movie that came out.
It's really good.
Have you watched it?
I watched it, funny enough, a couple of weeks back, about a week or so back.
It's called Hope and Glory. I think it came out, about a week ago, I think.
It's good.
It's on my watch list. I haven't got around to watching it yet.
I mean, it's obviously a fan movie, but if you like fan movies, I quite often like to watch fan movies when they're well made. And I thought it was really good. Yeah.
Cool. I'll definitely give that a go then.
Yeah. It's up there with some of the better fan efforts I've seen of films. So
yeah,
well worth a watch. But in any case, that was Mad Max 1979, and highly recommended.
Yeah,
I think all of them are worth watching.
Yeah, I do. I think they've, even 3, which I think is
by far the weakest, but there are certainly bits of that movie that I really like.
Yeah, and I'm really hopeful for Furiosa.
Oh, me too. I mean, I've got faith in George Miller pulling these movies off. He always does, and
they've already got another sequel in the works, apparently. So
right. I'm curious as to whether they will have Max in Furiosa, whether we see
the rumor is it's going to be a walk past sort of thing.
Yeah, which is what you want, right? It's just to establish that this is the world he is there and whatever.
Yeah.
But we said like Anya Taylor-Joy, she looks nothing like
no.
But great actor. So.
Well, I mean, I guess you could say it just leans into the whole.
Yeah,
story,
again, like Max, right?
Yeah,
she has become this mythical figure, and now we're telling stories about her, and she could look different in every film because it's just how people describe her.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking forward to it. I think it could be really good. Nice to see Chris Hemsworth. Hopefully he'll get the bad taste of Thor out of his mouth and really get into a new, into a great role here.
I mean, even he's disillusioned with the whole.
I think he's quite upset with the way they've handled his character now.
Yeah,
so I get the impression anyway.
He hated what they made his character.
So hopefully this will be something new for him to do. Obviously, it was the same actor who played Toe Cutter who played Immortan Joe.
Yes,
did a very good job with that as well. But yeah, I like it. I think he's great casting as him as the younger Joe.
Oh no, he's not. He's not younger Joe.
Is he not? I thought he was playing younger Immortan Joe.
He's the main bad guy. He's a different guy.
Is he?
Yes.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I can't remember who plays.
Maybe you're right. Oh yeah, Dr. Demetus.
Yeah.
Whoever that is. So so I am assuming Immortan Joe is in it though. Yes, he is. So he's played by Lackey Holm. I'm not sure who that is.
Yes. Oh, Holm, yeah.
Filmography. Matrix Reloaded, Revolutions.
Oh dear.
All the bad ones. Oh well, I don't know. Well, either way, it'll be interesting.
Okay.
Be interesting to see. I'm looking forward to the movie anyway, and Hemsworth.
One of the guys Tom Burke's in it, who's he's playing Praetorian Jack, and I really like Tom Burke. So I was glad that when I saw his name, attached to it. So yeah, I'm quietly hopeful.
Me too.
That it's gonna be cool.
Yeah, I think so. But in any case, we will be back next week with our usual review fare. And until then, stay safe, take care, and we will catch you next time.